Hi, I'm Michael O'Neill from the Solopreneur Hour podcast, and on this video, we're going to talk about how to monetize your podcast, how to monetize a YouTube channel, how to monetize a blog, or how to monetize any online business.
Job security for the unemployable.
Michael, you're so naughty.
So first and foremost, I want to apologize for my nasally voice. I've had a cold for a few days. I'm feeling much better now, but my sinuses have not caught up to how I feel. In this video, I'm going to share 10 ways that you can monetize your blog, your podcast, your YouTube channel, your online business. And I think I'll start with the one that everyone thinks is the easiest, which is advertising. Everyone thinks you can start a podcast in January and then monetize it in February. And they're going to just get advertisers to roll. And so let me explain a little bit about why that's not the case. And at the end of this video, I'm going to share with you kind of the secret trick of how you can get advertising for your show based on a decision you've made early on that will be way more lucrative even if you don't have a huge audience yet. So stay tuned for that. But let's talk about the two models of advertising, which is CPA and CPM. CPA is cost per acquisition, and CPM is weirdly cost per thousand. So cost per acquisition means that if I have an advertiser for my podcast and they have a specific offer and someone takes that offer, I get a commission based on them paying that advertiser. So that's an individual purchase, meaning that if, let's say I have a web hosting company that advertises on my show, and which is the Solopreneur Hour, if you haven't subscribed yet, but somebody takes them up on their offer of 50% off their first year of hosting or whatever it is. As soon as that transaction goes through, I will get a chunk of money based on that purchase. Okay, so that is cost per acquisition. Now, cost per thousand is, let's say that my podcast gets 10,000 individual downloads. That advertiser is going to say, okay, based on your average of downloads per episode, we're going to pay you X amount. So they'll say, okay, we'll pay you $500 per 1,000 listens you get to your show. Does that make sense? So if I get 10,000 listens to the show, let's say, okay, I'll give you $5,000 for advertising this particular spot. The problem with CPA is that when you don't have much of an audience, there's not a lot of people clicking on it, and you might get a couple of bucks out of the deal. The problem with CPM is that it's based on an antiquated industry, which is they're applying a radio type, like an old school broadcast radio idea to what I consider a much more modern way of communicating, which is podcasting. And the difference is how targeted the audience is for a podcast versus for a radio broadcast. So if by Nielsen ratings I get 100,000 listens to my radio broadcast, that's great. But those are 100,000 people from all walks of life, all kinds of demographics, versus my podcast, which is if I get 1,000 listens, but I have a very targeted podcast, in my opinion, it's much more valuable than a 100,000 listens of a random nature. Does that make sense? CPA and CPM are the general ways that people advertise on shows. The problem is they both require some amount of audience, which if you don't have an audience yet, you won't make a whole bunch of money. And that is really the concept of a lot of these, which is you have to be comfortable with not making money for a little while. You have to have enough time to put some content out there so that people will find you. Your audience will build. I can tell you on this channel, you do a video, it's gonna take, like for this video itself, it'll take me hours. This will take me, maybe 30 minutes to shoot, but it'll take me a few hours to edit and get the thing up, and it'll take me a whole day because I'm not great at it yet. But it'll take me a whole day to put this thing together and get it onto YouTube, not to mention the years of knowledge building it took to get these things in my head and be able to share them with you. Now, I'm perfectly okay with this video getting, 100 downloads for a while or 100 views. It's just part of the deal. The hope is that in the long run, as this audience builds for this channel and people view this thing more, at some point somebody will find value in it. So advertising is the number one way you can make money with your podcast, your YouTube channel, your online business. Number two, the second way you can make money with your YouTube channel, your online business, is affiliate marketing. And what that means is it's a little similar to cost per acquisition. There's a definitive number that a company will pay you based on a referral. For instance, if we met and I said, oh my gosh, you have to check out this movie, this is a great movie, and you went to go see the movie, and I had some affiliate arrangement with the movie theater, let's say you went and bought 4 tickets for you and your friends, they might give me a $15 kickback for the referral. That is effectively affiliate marketing. So you'll hear it a lot with, in fact, a great example of it is Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income. He has a video on his channel that's been around for years that says something like how to create a blog in 4 minutes or something like that. Like how to create your own website and blog in 4 minutes. Now that video has gotten hundreds of thousands of views, but here's the deal. He goes through the process of showing you how to set up your first website and blog. But what he does, and the really smart thing he does, is that he sends everybody to his affiliate link for his website hosting company. So as they watch the video, they go, oh, I want to set up a website in 4 minutes. They go to the description, they click on his affiliate link to go to his web hosting company, and then he makes money from that affiliate sale. And because he is so grandfathered in, he makes a fair bit of money based on something called lifetime customer value. And I'm going to explain that at the end of this video because it is, I think, a bit of the silver bullet on how to make money online without having a gigantic audience. But we'll get back to that. So I know for a fact that as people click this link, they see his training for 4 or 5 minutes. He then makes, X amount of dollars, let's say $100 from each one. Well, you're talking about a video that has hundreds of thousands of views. You're talking about thousands of people that have clicked that link, gone through his training, signed up for his web hosting company, and then the web hosting company has then sent Pat $100 per person. So it adds up to be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. If you look at his income reports, he makes $20,000 a month from this affiliate arrangement he has. And I will say, even on this channel, which doesn't have that many subscribers, I think as I speak, as I'm doing this video, I've got 1,100 and something. I just looked the other day, I had no idea. I have one video so far, how to use a mixer for a podcast. That's been my big runaway video. It has, at this moment, it has about 21,000 views on it. A lot of people have watched that video, click through to my link, which shows people what gear to buy to set up your podcast. And I've gotten paid probably $1,000 overall over the last few months in affiliate arrangements from Amazon from that one video alone. So while I can't say I've monetized via YouTube advertising, because I don't qualify for it yet, this YouTube channel has made $1,000 in affiliate earnings for me over that time. And we call it mailbox money. I mean, that video is going to continue to perpetuate. It's going to continue to be shared. It's going to continue to be viewed. People will continue to click those links. And I will hopefully continue to make some money. Maybe it's a couple $100 a month. But when you think about online business, that's pretty good. That's enough for me to pay a virtual assistant to then reinvest in my YouTube channel to make sure I have end cards and all the things you need to have a good, successful YouTube channel. So I'm great with that. So that's what affiliate earnings can do. Number 3, coaching and consulting. I think of all the ways you can monetize a podcast or a YouTube channel, this is the easiest. So when I started the Solopreneur Hour in August of 2013, I had obviously 0 listeners when I began. So the show started getting more listeners along the way. And I would get these emails from people, and I didn't know better. I'm just, I get a microphone, I talk into it. People start listening. It's great. I started getting these emails of people that said, hey, do you do any coaching around, entrepreneurship? And I was like, no. 39 times, I'm like, no, I don't do anything like that. The 40th time, I'm like, yeah, of course I do. I'm looking at this thing going, all right, I'm clearly, there's an audience that wants something from me. They're telling me what they want. Do you do some coaching or consulting around this subject? So let me tell you the key on how to make this work. Again, one of the biggest issues I have is when people start a show, they're like, oh, I'm starting a show in February. I'm going to start my mastermind in March. I'm like, no, you're not. They're going to tell you when they're ready for you to start your mastermind. That's how this is going to work. So what I did is I started mentioning on the show, hey, I'm thinking of starting this group mastermind. I'm calling it Solo Lab. If anybody's interested, and this is a really good strategy you guys can use. If anybody's interested in this, I've set up a 15-minute Skype or Zoom call, whatever you like. Go to this destination. I think I called it like iwantsololab.com or something. And fill out the little form and register for a call. This is just like a little exploratory call to see if you and I are a good fit to work together. So in my head, I wanted 10 people that felt pretty committed to joining this group. And so I did 40 of these calls, 40 of them. I set up 3 separate days. I did like 6 hours back to back of these 15-minute calls. I had an idea of what I wanted to do with this coaching program in my head, but I will tell you, it radically changed between when I started these 40 calls and when I ended them. Because people would just tell me exactly what they wanted when I was on these things. I said, man, that's so different than what I thought it was going to be. And in fact, they were asking for something much simpler than what I had envisioned. I'm thinking I've got to create this big grand vision. And really, people just wanted a community out of the deal. So at the end of these 15-minute calls, and this is November. So I started in August. This is about November of 2013. So that's 3 months or so. I said, at the end of every call, I said, if I started this thing next week and it cost $300, would you be a definite yes, a definite no, or a definite maybe? And again, in my head, I wanted 10 people to say yes. And I got 17 that said, yeah, I would do it next week. If you started this thing next week, I would do it. So I said, okay. I went back. I started so simply. I literally went to Facebook, got a subscription buy button set up on a S2 member, which is a free plugin for WordPress membership site page. And I set up a landing page. I said, I'm going to launch this thing on December 6th at 12 o'clock. I sent emails out to the people that said that they were interested. And of course, I put it on my show. I put it on social media. It said, hey, the doors are open. Let's do this thing. And again, in my head, I wanted 10 people. And by the end of the first hour, I had 13 purchases. And by the end of the first month, I had 53 people in Solo Lab. And I said, holy Toledo. So now I've got 53 people that are paying me $300 every quarter, essentially $100 a month. And I went from this show having no listenership to now all of a sudden essentially being a 6-figure earning podcast because I created this coaching group, which was really at the time just a Facebook group that we would meet on Facebook and we would talk. And so it was really crazy. But the coaching and consulting thing, again, this has provided you know your stuff. You've got some chops. Can be the easiest way to monetize what you do because as you create a YouTube channel or a podcast brand, and if you do it well, people will be attracted to it. And if they're attracted to it, they're going to want to know, how do you turn your brain inside out and teach me what you know how to do? And so monetizing via a coaching group or even one-on-one coaching. Right now I have 8 people that I coach one-on-one every month that pay $500 a month. I want that to be 10, so I'm still working towards getting 10 people a month to do that. But it's not that difficult to schedule for me 2 days a month to do all these back-to-back coaching calls, and that's worth $5,000 a month. That's not bad. $5,000 a month is as much as most Americans make in a year. And I'm working effectively 2 days a month, turning my brain inside and out and sharing 25 years of coaching expertise with them. So if you understand, that can be the easiest way to monetize your brain. Number 4, live events with an upsell. So Pod Mastery is an event I put on with my buddy John Lee Dumas, which was a live weekend workshop for 20 people that paid $1,000 each to learn how to podcast better from John and I. So by the time we got done with all the expenses for the weekend, we would each walk with, let's say, $8,000 or so, which is not bad for a weekend's work. Again, it involves turning our brain inside out and taking our experience, and it involves getting people to a destination. The good news is, though, it was only 20 people. So that's not that many people to get to a live event. We did an Airbnb for the event venue, which was fantastic. We did it in Venice. And people flew in, some of them drove in, and we had an amazing time. We had it catered by Chipotle, which was a really great, really easy way to do it. So we kept our expenses relatively small. They paid about $1,000 each to attend this 2-day workshop, which in the grand scheme of things is not a tremendous amount of money to spend when you're learning from people that have been there and done that. It'll very much accelerate the process of your success. So think of how you might be able to put a few people in a room for a devoted weekend of training where you provide a curriculum, you go through the process. It's always great to partner up with somebody because it takes a little of the onus off you, gives you someone that could take a picture or document the process, and just has a little more of a authority vibe to it when you partner with somebody. So think about what you could do. What you could offer an audience member that you could teach them in a day or two that they could pay a high ticket price for. Another strategy you could consider with a live event is doing a larger free live event, but then it has an upsell to a higher ticket product at the event. My buddy Nick Unsworth has done a really cool strategy with his live events, which is he charges $97 for people to attend the event, but then when they show up, he says, you know what? Here's a $97 refund for you, or here's a $300 credit towards one of our programs. And his programs are $500, $1,000, $5,000. And so they'll say, actually, I'd rather have the coupon. They take the $300 coupon, but then buy a $1,000 product. So his net is really $700 from that, even though it feels like they're getting a great deal and everybody wins. So that's a really great way to take a live event and upsell them into a higher ticket product. The 5th way you can monetize your blog or your podcast or your online business is one of my favorites, which is speaking gigs. These are all... Let's see, I emceed Thrive in 2016. I've spoken at Social Media Marketing World 4 times. I've got Traffic and Conversion Summit I'm just about to be the MC of here in 2019. Podfest I've spoken at. This will be the 3rd time. I've got Amplify, which is Keith Yackey's event. So many events that I've spoken at all over the world that have come from having a podcast or a YouTube channel, etc. In my case, a podcast. And it's one of my favorite things to do. So my policy is generally to charge for speaking gigs, but if it's a high profile conference, like Social Media Marketing World, something like that, I will often do it for free, at least the first time, with the option of being able to sell something of my own at the event. So let's say I have a $500 product, like my Art of the Interview course. If I'm gonna go speak at a podcast conference, but they let me pitch the course, I know that on the back end, I'm gonna make $10,000 from that speaking gig. Even though they don't pay me to speak there, I still make a bunch of money on the back end. Does that make sense? So I will get travel expenses from them and say, look, just get my hotel room, get my flight. I will do the gig for free, which hopefully to them is going to be a bunch of value. I'm going to bring a bunch of value to their audience, but then say, hey, if you don't mind, I'm going to sell my product on the back end of this thing and everybody wins. So speaking gigs are also really, really fun. They grow your authority, they grow your brand. And if you have a podcast or a YouTube channel, they definitely grow your subscriber base. Because one of the things I like to do is say, hey guys, if you haven't subscribed to my show yet, grab your phone right now, go to the podcast app, hit subscribe, and I want to see all of your shining faces, in my RSS feed from now on. And if you're at an event where there's a bunch of people there and even a fraction of them subscribe, you will get a huge bump in your viewership. In fact, if you're on iTunes, you will see yourself rise right up in the ranks when all of these new subscribers join your show. So I love speaking gigs. Speaking gigs begat other speaking gigs. It's great to get a video of you doing the speaking gig and then use that video to then influence other conferences to hire you as a speaker. It's just a really cool way to grow your brand. I also love emceeing them. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I've emceed Thrive. I've emceed some events at Social Media Marketing World. I'm now emceeing at Traffic and Conversion 2019. I'm super stoked about that one. I've done a bunch of private events as well. So speaking is one of my favorite ways to make money. Again, it's a long-term, long-tail money-making opportunity, but it can be very, very lucrative if you do it the right way. All right, number 6. Product endorsements. Here's a microphone. It's made by Heil. Heil was nice enough to sponsor my show very early on, not with ads, but with gear. So I speak out of a Heil PR40. They've sent me this great PR77D. Allen and Heath sent me 2 mixers. One, their XB10 broadcast mixer, and then their ZI10 general mixer. They're both great podcast mixers. So while I haven't run ads, while they haven't sent me a check, that's thousands of dollars worth of gear that I'm using because I mentioned them on the show. I've been using Heil microphones since I started the podcast. That's now almost 6 years ago. So that is, again, worth thousands and thousands of dollars. You have to think about monetization, not only in the money that somebody gives you, but also the money that you spend to provide the content for your audience. So if you can get product endorsements, which is really great. I'm speaking into a Canon camera with a Rode microphone on top. I've got lights by who knows what the company is, a tripod that I don't know, but again, we're looking at a couple thousands of dollars worth of gear to then be processed by a computer that also costs a couple $1,000s. You get the idea. You pay for every bit of creating content. And so if you don't have to make those payments, if you get enough of an audience, if you get enough influence that you can mention a product a couple times and they'll send it to you, that is a great way to monetize your brand. Number 7. And this one is a little obscure. Very few people know that you can actually do this. So the minute I started my podcast, literally the first day, in my head I thought, I am now a professional broadcaster. I am now in the media. I'm going to have influence over people that listen to my podcast. Because of that mentality, and because I grew up a little bit around broadcasting, I knew that, hey, wait a second. If I'm media, that means I can cover things, right? You'd be so shocked to know that almost every conference, every live event that you know of, they want media to be there. They hope that you will get there, that you will share with the world what their event is, so their event grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and they can make more money, which means that you can get media passes. I grabbed just a few of these from my wall. I have a wall that has all of my passes on it. Let me share you something. We got the NAMM show. We've got CES. I'll save that one because it's one of my favorites in the world. We've got MLB All-Star Day. We've got the Los Angeles Audio Show. We've got CEDIA Expo. We have the Los Angeles Auto Show. My favorite media, NFL games. Now, I've covered a couple of games for the NFL, including the AFC Championship in Pittsburgh, which was one of my highlights of my podcasting career. But Comic-Con, auto shows, Literally anything you can think of, you can probably get a media pass for. I've never tried to get one for like the Grammys or the Oscars, but I'll bet that if I tried hard enough, that over time I could pull it off. So if you want access to some opportunities that you would never get otherwise, it is absolutely with a media pass to a live event. It is so cool. Not only that, but when you go to something like CES, which is the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, you have access to things you'd never have access as a civilian, but you have to think about some of these shows cost thousands of dollars to get into. So again, when you think about monetization, it's not just about the money they're paying you. It's about the money you don't have to spend to cover the event. Now, if you are in the media at one of these events, you got to do something. Like I'm walking around with a camera and a backpack and some recording gear. So I'm trying to find people to interview as I go through the weekend, but that's not my entire weekend. I'll spend a day doing media stuff, and then I'll spend the next 3 days being a consumer and just sort of getting access to cool things that you want to get access to. But you got to put in the work, you got to put some content out. You've probably seen some of my, reviews of mixers or some speakers or something on other YouTube channels that I have. And that's from a media pass. So you got to make sure that they get their value because you want to be able to go back year after year after year. But media passes are one of the most amazing things that you can get. Try the Sundance Film Festival. Try Comic-Con, try any auto show. Just try to go via media to any event that you love, and I'll bet you can get in. Now, there are some qualifications to it. You have to have some number, and they have whatever their minimums are, some number of downloads or views or something like that to whatever your channels are. So you have to make sure you qualify for that, but in my experience, they're not that strict. Like they're looking for a few thousand views a month, which even if you have a smallish podcast isn't unreasonable. So media passes, they are the hidden gem of monetizing a show. Number 8, swag. Now I love free stuff. In fact, the reason I started my beginner audiophile podcast is because I loved audio gear so much that I wanted the Brown Santa, otherwise known as the UPS guy, to come and bring me audio gear to review all the time. Well, one of the perks of reviewing gear is sometimes they don't want it back. Sometimes they're like, you know what, it's actually gonna cost us more to have you ship this thing back than it is for you just to keep it. As is the case with some of these headphones. Like these are both very fancy headphones. These are probably $600 or $700. I think these are $300 for these, and they're beautiful. These are beautiful audiophile grade headphones that now I can own, I can cherish, I can have as my own, and I didn't have to pay anything for them. So again, it's how you view monetization. If you are in an industry that has gear, you can absolutely put yourself in an authoritative position in a pretty short period of time, again, by putting in the work. I'm putting out a show. I've done 30-something episodes. I've put hundreds of hours into it. For me to come out with a set of headphones from a company that I've been promoting to this audience, I don't feel like it's an unfair trade. So I feel like in a way I earned these, but it is one of the really cool perks of doing a show. My buddy Matt Farah, who has the Smoking Tire, gets a free car to drive every week. Like he pretty much doesn't need to own a car if he doesn't want to. Spike Ferriston, also in the car world, and he also loves watches. He gets, $30,000 watches sent to him just so he can wear them on his wrist for a couple of weeks and just kind of dig them and talk about them and share with his audience on them. Those are the kinds of things that are beautiful perks of creating content within a specific niche. And sometimes you don't have to send them back. My home theater is full of amazing SVS who makes these speakers behind me, which are these beautiful SVS wireless speakers, which are so cool. If you have an office that you want a really great sounding pair of speakers, they're not that big. Here's my hand. Not that big, but they sound amazing. Well, SVS has these amazing wireless speakers. You just plug them in. You can stream to them with your phone. You don't need any other gear for them. They sound amazing. Now, I'll probably have to send these back, but I've got a pair of their subwoofers in my home theater that I don't have to send back, and they have transformed the sound of my house. So it's that kind of swag that keeps me making more content for this industry. And it's the kind of thing that I love because I love me some gear. So think about the swag idea as you go into your industry. What are some of the things you would like that you continue to pay for? Like, I have a drum set sitting over here. If I somehow started reviewing drum gear and they said, oh, keep the snare drum or keep this cymbal or keep this drum set, I would be in heaven. So think about swag as a key way to monetize your show. All right, we are getting towards the end here, which is great because this light is getting so bright to my right-hand side that I'm gonna look like Phil Collins from No Jacket Required soon. And thumbs up to anybody who understands what I just said. Number 9, products, your own products. So over the last few years, I've been able to create a number of products. I would say my flagship is, my show is known for these deep dive interviews. And at the time when I created it, not a lot of people were doing those. They were doing the kind of thing where they would have a few set questions and that would be the show. And I said, you know what? I don't want to do that. I'm gonna do my show live to tape, like a show in the 60s, which is like, I'm gonna hit record, I'm gonna hit stop, it's gonna be an hour, and whatever happens in that hour is what the show is. I'm not gonna go back and edit. I'm not gonna edit out ums and ahs and things like that, obviously, because I still do them here. And I want the show to be as pure as it can be. Well, that resonated with people. And they said, well, how do I become a better interviewer? And I struggled with knowing how to even teach that for months and months and months. It was a very meta concept to try to share, because I'm essentially having to share, well, how do I teach people to be a better conversationalist? How do you listen better? How do you be present enough to walk an audience that's always here? You always know where your audience is through a narrative where they understand what that guest is saying, but still make the conversation engaging. So that was challenging for me to do, but then I did it. And I created a course called The Art of the Interview, which was $500, which I thought was fair, not too expensive, but not too cheap. You want people to be able to have a little skin in the game. And I said, I'm gonna put this course out. That has probably been my flagship course, but I've had a number of different smaller courses. I had a social media course that was like $100. I've had Life After 8 Weeks, which was kind of like, well, what do you do? How do you promote your show after 8 weeks on the iTunes New and Noteworthy? I've had Conference-topia, which is free. You can get that right now for free at conferencetopia.com. In fact, I'll put a link to the description if you want to learn how to be a better, how to go to conferences and events better and network better and get better results. Like, you can literally 10x your business if you conference correctly, you know? Anyway, so my own products and services are things that I can sell. In fact, you could do that almost right away, but I don't recommend it. I recommend there being a little molting time from when you create your show to offering your own products and services. You want your audience to feel like, hey, you know what? We're in this thing together. And I want to be able to know you and like you and trust you before you try to start selling me something. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't start trying to sell your own stuff on day one because they don't know you at all yet. What did Gary Vee say? He said, don't try to close the deal on the first date. Like, give it a few dates first. If you give it 3 months, let's say you give it 3 months of doing your show and you've got this nice core audience that's comfortable and used to, and then you go, hey, you know, guys, I'm thinking about, I have a course on this, and I was thinking about offering it as a discount to my listeners. If anybody's interested, drop me an email. And you'll get a litmus test of the people that are actually interested in that product. And if nobody responds, they're not ready yet. Don't try to sell them stuff if they're not ready yet. They will tell you when they're ready. Like in my case with Solo Lab, they were like, hey, do you sell anything? Do you have any courses that I can buy? And you know, I didn't, so I had to create one for them. But there is a time that you can create your own products and services. And honestly, if somebody buys that, that is a 100% commission on your end. You don't have to pay any affiliate earnings. You don't have to pay to get a workshop done. You don't have to pay for flights or food or anything, at a speaking gig. That is a 100% profit if you create your own course and are able to direct people towards your course from your YouTube channel or your podcast. So it is one of the most lucrative ways that you can monetize a show. Lastly, but not leastly, the number 10 way you can monetize your blog, your podcast, your online presence is books. You can write a book. I have a stack of books in my hand right now, and this is just a fraction of what I have on my bookshelves. These have all been written by friends of mine: Jim Palmer, Calvin Wayman, Joel Kahn, Laura Peterson, Brian G. Johnson, Joel Kahn again, God Joel, Natalie Sisson, Daniel D. Piazza, Chandler Bolt, John Lee Dumas. Who else we got? We've got Gary V. and Allison Maslin. Allison Medley. I know her too. Hi, Allison. Books are a great way to not only continue your authority in a space, but it's really good for your own personal brand to go through the process of writing a book, and it's very helpful to articulate the kind of things that are in your head. I have a book called Unemployable. That's been about 75% done for a couple years, but it was really cool during the process of writing the book, how I had to think through all of the trainings that I almost take for granted now. I had to think about why I know something and how to articulate it to somebody else. It was actually really, really refreshing to be able to do. And the cool thing about a book is that you get a big bump. You'll probably end up trying to do some sort of book tour, or you'll try to rank on Amazon or on New York Times bestseller, and by the way, never mind, I'm gonna get into best-selling author. You know the people I'm talking about. They're like, I'm a best-selling author. Anyway, if you work on the process of selling a book to an audience, you're not only going to articulate your own brain a little bit better, but there's something about a book that gives you more brand authority in a space. You'll get more speaking gigs from it. You'll be a published author. You can walk up to somebody and say, hey, you know what? Here's my book. Here's the book that I wrote on the subject that I'm talking about. And somebody goes, man, they must really know their stuff if they've written a book on it. Most normal people have not written a book. So to write a book, I will say that you may or may not be able to count on book sales directly, although people do sell books. I know people that have sold a lot of books. John Lee Dumas here with his Freedom Journal did a Kickstarter worth like $600,000. That's a lot of book sales. That's pretty good. You can't count on the actual book sales to give you the monetization. What you can do though is think about how book sales can influence other people to give you more gigs. And that can then open up doors, and that's how you can monetize. It's really, really cool. Okay, before I wrap up here, I promised you a bit of a silver bullet of monetization, and here it is. It's LCV, or lifetime customer value. Well, what does that mean? I'll explain it in terms of my other podcast, Beginner Audiophile. Now that show only gets about 5,000 listens per episode. So it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not crazy high. It's close to being able to monetize traditionally, but it is such a hyper-targeted niche that lifetime customer value can give me a lot more monetization options than something like CPM, or cost per thousand, like we talked about in the number one way to monetize your show. Here's what that means. At an audio show, they'll have it at a hotel. So they'll empty out a few floors of the hotel. They'll empty out the beds and the couches from the suites. They'll set up speakers and gear in those suites. And then as the audio consumer, or in the media, you'll go from room to room to room and listen to all these different speakers and amplifiers and things like that. So it's the only way you can hear this gear, because they don't sell it at Best Buy. They only have it at the high-end stereo shops. So for the audio manufacturers, this is the only way that they can get their gear listened to by consumers in a lot of cases, or people that are in the media. So It's a big expense for them. If you think about a company that's like from London, they might fly 5 or 6 people out to a show here in America. They've got all the gear they have to send over. They've got to get hotel rooms and rental cars and food and expenses for all of those people. They have to ship all the gear out, and then they have to be there for a few days while they're at this event. I'm talking about, even for a small company, that is a $25,000 to sometimes $100,000 weekend. That's a lot. And we're talking about like 500 or 600 people that'll walk through that room over the course of a weekend. So it's not crazy numbers, but the gear is pretty expensive. Like, what do I have around here? I got a couple pieces of gear, like right here, this little white guy. This is $1,200 for this thing. So that's a pretty good chunk of change for a little piece of audio gear. That's one little piece of an entire system. So the important question for me to ask these manufacturers is not, how much are you willing to pay, for an episode? I'm getting 5,000 downloads. It's for me to ask them, well, what's your lifetime customer value? So for that fictional British company, let's say that I would say, I'm doing this show twice a month. I'll charge you $500 a month to read 2 1-minute advertisements with a little 15-second pre-roll. Okay, so $500. That's cool. $500 for 2.5 minutes of work is not that difficult, right? But here's the kicker, and that'd be great. That'd be a great deal for them. And then if I ask them, which this, by the way, actually happened, well, what's your lifetime customer value? Where they said $1,300 is their lifetime customer value. I said, whoa. I'm thinking that's way more. It's more than double of what I thought their lifetime customer value was. But now let's do the math on that. I've got a podcast which has laser targeted audience, 5,000 people per episode that are completely laser targeted towards high-end audio. I've got a company that's trying to sell high-end audio products. And for each person that buys one of their products, over time, they can say, all right, that's worth $1,300. Does it start making sense now? So now, as the podcaster, I go, wait a second. That means for 10,000 exposures, which is what they would get. I know if I do 2 episodes in a month, and my episodes average 5,000 each, that's going to be 10,000 listens or 20,000 sets of earballs on an advertisement that I give their product. And of those 10,000 listens, I only need 2 people out of 10,000 to purchase one of their products for that company to break even if I charge them $2,000 a month. So now I've gone from $500, which is CPM, using lifetime customer value, which is a much more important metric. I can charge them $2,000, get 2 people to buy out of 10,000, and everybody wins. In fact, it's a way better deal for the advertiser in this case than it is for the podcaster. So what I would typically do in this case and say, look, I'm going to charge you $2,000 this month. We're going to do a 3-month contract, so it's going to be $6,000 total. I'm going to need that cash up front, but here's what we're going to do. I'm going to track how many people go through my purchasing link, and if it's more than 6, we're going to have a conversation at the end of this 3 months, and we're going to see how we need to rejigger this arrangement. So if like 20 people purchased items based on my podcast of that company, then they are way ahead of the game. And next time we do it, it's going to be $3,000 for that month of advertising. Does that make sense? So lifetime customer value is so important, especially in targeted niche podcasts and YouTube channels, which is why I go back to the beginning, which is the most important thing you can do to launch any podcast or any YouTube channel or any online business is to nail your brand. You've got to get your brand right. You've got to be able to answer the question, I help blank do blank. And it's got to be very specific and very targeted. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Please, if you haven't already, I've got all kinds of really cool productivity videos where you can learn to use Siri shortcuts in such a cool way with Zapier and all these other great products. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you check the other videos out, and thank you so much for watching.